Good morning, everyone. Matt Reed with ITS Partners. We're going to go ahead and get started. Thanks so much for taking the time to join us to learn a little bit about advanced threat protection and Symantec's much-awaited response to what's going on right now in the threat landscape. So I lead the security business with ITS. I've been here for coming up on 3 years. Just a brief background on me. I have a consulting background. Got into consulting in the 90s from an analyst position. Had a tour in the channel. Went to work in the vendor space for over a decade, and then have come back to the channel. And I've been working at ITS, leading the security business now for almost 3 years. So this is our agenda. I'm going to set the table and set the stage a little bit for today's threat landscape. Looking back on the last decade, a lot has changed, and the way the bad guys are coming at organizations today has changed quite a bit. So we're going to set the table with a little bit about the threat landscape, and then Symantec's response to that. Many of you know all the different, really strong franchises that Symantec has in the way of their portfolio. But as we all are realizing, a change is needed. We need a different approach and a different way of solving the problem around threats and how they get into the companies and how we prioritize and remediate that. So we're going to talk about Symantec's response. We also have a demo that we're gonna provide, and this is going to come from one of our security architects, John Higday, who's also on with us. And then we're going to talk a little bit about ATP readiness and what you need to be aware of and what you can expect as far as considering ATP, how you adopt that technology, and some of the sensible places to start. So let's talk a little bit about threat landscape. So today's security professionals face a very complex and rapidly changing threat environment. The growth in data that users are creating and storing, the ever-expanding number of endpoints, servers, even mobile devices, the complexity of everything seems to be putting organizations more and more at risk. And as we all know, the targeted attacks and the bad guys have the diligence, the persistence, and in a lot of cases the patience to execute very sophisticated attempts over months and sometimes even years at getting inside organizations and doing bad things, whether it's defacing something, stealing something. As we know now, the prime target is personally identifiable information. It's a big target these days. So these actors, they apply these sophisticated tactics now to trick unsuspecting victims into clicking links or downloading bad files or leveraging exploits and endpoints to infiltrate organizations, and they even customize each attack campaign as needed to achieve their goals. I like to compare the differences between skill and focus. If you are an attacker and you're trying to get in my company, if you are skilled and not focused, my defenses need to be stronger than my neighbor or to my peers, and the theory or the thinking there is that the bad guys are going to get them because I have to be stronger. It's kind of like being able to outrun the bear, right? If they're focused and not skilled, then I need to be better defended against that attacker or that bad person. That person with malicious intent. I need to be stronger than them. When you start to think about focused and skilled, well, now you've got a real problem, and that's where advanced persistent threats come in. So say what you want about malware being, a commodity, but even last year and the year before, it was recognized that there were 317 million new pieces of malware created in that 2014 time period, and that's more than 1 million threats created daily. So, what we're finding is that malware has changed so much, and then in some ways that it hasn't changed at all. It's kind of neat to look at that both ways. But with the growing number of attack vectors, different systems, the skills, and how funded these adversaries are now, and all the various targets, it's nearly impossible to block every threat before it reaches an endpoint. So today's cyber criminals, they're employing stealthy methods to bypass traditional defenses, and even sandboxing technologies, which we'll talk a little bit about here coming up. But malware is becoming virtual machine aware, so it knows sometimes when it's in a sandbox environment. And some of the toolkits are bypassing the more popular sandboxes today. So prevention, it's not enough, or maybe it's just simply not working. But even with a solid foundation and a strong approach to threat protection, the evidence shows that a breach of some kind is pretty inevitable. So we've got to start with knowing where important data is, back to that, PII being the valuable target. And there's a lot of other use cases that you can use, but it's a big focus that we have is around information protection. So they kind of go hand in hand with this notion of threat protection. So knowing where important data resides in the first place, and information, to be more specific, not just all data, but information, treated like currency, protect the 50s and the 100s, protect your gold, protect your silver, and then worry about the change in the couch cushions later, but prioritize that, right? So again, we know that to be the biggest motivator for digital thieves and criminals. So while you're trying to keep bad things out, at the same time, you got to ensure privacy of your sensitive information. Layers. So today, organizations have to prepare not only to be able to respond to the problems when they're discovered, but shift from a pure prevention strategy, which again is not working. It's a lofty goal, and what that means is attempting to keep up with 100% of the threats off the endpoints and out of the network, to be more of a comprehensive approach that focuses on ongoing prevention, absolutely, but detection and response. So doing everything we can to stop incoming attacks, without a doubt, but finding incursions or indicators of compromise when they happen, quickly contain and remediate them, and then restoring operations and remediating against future attacks. So making sure that if someone found a gap or a vulnerability, that we address that and keep that from happening again. But even with a solid foundation and a strong approach to threat protection, evidence shows that, again, some sort of breach is inevitable. 5 out of 6 large companies experienced breaches last year. So organizations, they really got to take solid preparation, not only to be able to respond when they're discovered, but shift in that prevention strategy, and trying to keep 100% of the threats off the endpoints and out of the network to more of a comprehensive approach. So here's a big part of the problem today. Too many products and too many solutions that are not integrated and cannot talk to one another. Security analysts are spending way too much time manually trying to solve for this challenge and connect the dots and connect the silos in the company. They're detecting threats and compromises with one tool, performing forensic analysis with another, notifying the network team to watch out for this nasty stuff. It's just too much. It's too much for security operations, and it's not getting the job done. That combined with an absolute explosion. I mean, look at all these logos down here, right? I mean, explosion in the cybersecurity market. It seems like there's a new startup every week. Walking around RSA last year, you got all the big players and the larger companies in the middle of the exhibit hall, and then you've got this whole perimeter of startups and up-and-comers. So this market is just exploding. I mean, 77 billion last year, expected to grow to 170 billion in the next 5 years, or 4 years now. They were in 2016, 5 years if we're in the beginning. So that massive growth has led to many standalone products, many standalone vendors, different ways to solve the challenges. I feel like things are just this crazy in the vendor community now. Just imagine what this is going to be in a couple more years. So there's a big part of the problem. Too many tools, a bunch of underutilized tools. A lot of the notable breaches that we've been studying for the last 2 years all suffer from this right here. And so let's talk about detection for a second. As we said, analysts today need to examine many distinct consoles, often connecting the dots, manual effort in order to get the real visibility into suspicious activity in their environment. Or they may need to be working with some sort of SIM solution, log files from various products into a SIM solution, creating custom collectors, complex rules, all in an effort to uncover threat activity. And it's always a warning when you're talking with an organization or a company, and they're like, well, our SIM really isn't finding too much stuff. And I met immediately, that's a big warning flag. If your SIM isn't finding stuff today or telling you, about attempts to commit incursions in your organization, it's not looking for the right stuff. It's not configured correctly, because we know there's advanced malware out there looking for everyone and anyone. So once a security team does learn about an attack in their organization, it can require days, weeks, sometimes even months to completely remediate it. So intelligence, this is a really important part of getting to the real visibility in the organization. Again, there's too many tools that don't talk. We need to move from this malware detected, network threat blocked, into we have determined this threat to be operating across all these different control points. Here's some real detail and some rich intelligence about it. Here's where it came in. Here's where it's gone. Here's where we've stopped it. And it becomes a really important element of prioritizing what's going on and determining a weapon of mass inconvenience from potentially a very sophisticated and calculated attempt to exfiltrate information out of the organization. So, I think we're all really hungry in the community for rich intelligence, and that's going to come with a robust and a world-class intelligence network. And a little bit of controversy here. As much as we've all been a fan of Bestofbreed for the last decade, and we all look to Gartner and IDC and Forrester and everyone to tell us who's got the best technology, the game is changing. A lot of the companies that have had these, notable breaches that we've, again, all been learning about and kind of replaying, they've all had really good technology. The problem is a lot of it isn't optimized. But I think the bigger problem is that we don't have rich intelligence behind it, connecting the dots. So we believe Bestofbreed is still important, but it could potentially take a back seat to this notion of intelligence being more and more important. Knowing your organization's true risk and having the visibility through good intelligence, that's where the game is going. So let's talk about Symantec's response. So again, much awaited release of Symantec Advanced Threat Protection. So this is a new offering that addresses the most pressing security concerns that we've been talking about here, particularly existing Symantec endpoint protection and email.cloud customers. So what this product does is effectively adds it's kind of like a security camera. Someone mentioned this to me yesterday. I was talking with a customer and they were like, it's kind of like like a home security system. I'm like, actually, that's a pretty good analogy of that. And people, those of you that know me out there, I'm lousy for analogies. So it's kind of like a security camera, adding the SEP and email security.cloud, connecting the core endpoints to the network and to email, the perimeter, if you will. So exposing all the rich data that these products observe at the endpoints in email servers to detect new attacks, advanced attacks at all these control points. It's kind of interesting because Symantec is trying to solve for the network. We've had the gateway solutions, which ITS goes way back with. But even looking at Palo Alto, they're partnering up with Ponemon. The debate, I think, is getting debunked right now around, are you a network guy? Are you an endpoint guy? Where do you think the best place to solve malware is? I think what the market is telling us and what the vendors are telling us is that you need it all. You can't solve it in one particular spot. You need all three. Malware breeds at the endpoint. It's coming in through the network. The bidirectional nature of the internet in this crazy connected world that we've got. Everything is running through the internet. We have this amazing, fortunate situation in North America with all this high-speed fiber connecting us all. It's really made the attack surface a great opportunity for not only all of us to do all the things that we do in this work and personally connected world, but it's also created a great opportunity for the bad guys. So Symantec ATP, it adds a new network protection capability to discover attacks entering your organization through web, even FTP, other common network protocols. And so the modules that make this up are ATP for endpoint, ATP network, and ATP email. And you can use any combination of these various modules that address those different control points. So ATP then correlates and aggregates suspicious events across all those installed and configured control points and helps organization prioritize these events in one console. So a security analyst can quickly investigate, remediate incidents that pose the most risk to the organization. And again, a lot of value here for existing SEP customers. So let's get a little bit further into what this is. This is kind of a simple logical architecture that shows the various pieces and the various components. So let's go over this high-level architecture. Imagine a unified solution that combines intelligence from endpoints, network, email, and backed by Symantec's massive global sensor network. So they've crowdsourced security, for years and years and years, and have got this amazing intelligence network, the world's largest civilian intelligence network. And what this allows us to do is lay that on top of these technologies to stop threats that evade individual point products. And with one click of a button, ATP can search for, discover, and potentially remediate any artifacts associated with attack in your organization from a single console. So if you're looking at this drawing of this picture here, in the upper center of this diagram, you'll see like a 2U server platform. So that's the ATP platform itself. It's kind of the nucleus or the brain behind all of this. And in many cases, it's a physical appliance, but it can also be a virtual machine, depending on your requirements and your use case. But this is the heart of everything. This is where the magic happens. Below that, across the center, you can see the SEP infrastructure and the 5 distinct layers of protection that we've all come to know and love and expect from SEP. Across the top, you'll see the connection to email.cloud, the GIN, and then the other critical areas of ATP, which is SYNC That's the sandbox layer, and Synapse, which is the data correlation layer. So these things really extend the capability of SAP, giving you better detection and the ability to remediate against what matters most. So let's get a little bit further into Cynic and Synapse now. ATP includes this thing called Cynic, and it's a new cloud-based sandboxing and payload detonation service. So think of this kind of like the behavior and the reputation is like the TSA, and this is the bomb squad, right? So this has been built from the ground up to uncover today's advanced threats and attacks. So how this works is it leverages a few things: advanced machine learning combined with Symantec's global intelligence to detect even stealthily, threats that are trying to get in there and do bad things, right? So this service executes files in bare metal as well as virtually in that environment to uncover, threats that would normally evade detection by a traditional sandboxing service. We're starting to see a lot of virtually aware malware now, and that's because of sandboxes. So again, people are moving around, some of the detection and some of the protection attempts to keep the bad stuff out. So they detect the VM presence, the malware does, and sometimes it just waits quietly until the sandboxing service would go ahead and pass them through. So it detects the VM presence, sits and waits, acts and operates, in the way that the user would, and waits to be passed on. So Symantec took this another step and said, well, the game is changing. We need to have virtual and physical. So really, really important there. So again, this is cloud-based, and what that means is it's always going to be up to date. It's going to be very scalable, and it's going to be fast. So Cynic recognizes the most popular file types used in targeted attacks, and again, it's going to find things that traditional defenses miss, and can give you clean convictions in minutes as opposed to hours or days. Another overlay to ATP is the intelligence network piece that we're talking about and how important that is. So let's talk about Synapse. So again, today's products, a lot of them largely only collect what we're calling traditional intelligence. And again, that's kind of like virus detected, malicious email blocked, network connection blocked, things like that. So they tend to ignore the rich intelligence that we need today to discover new attacks and give us information like every network connection from every machine, that kind of confidence, that kind of visibility. Here's every attempted login from each computer. Here's detailed information about incoming emails and web pages, right? So that's the next level. So you can even think of this as a personal slice of Symantec's MSS and monitoring platform, and that multi-tier correlation and big data platform. So this is very much MSS-like correlation between these three Symantec specific solutions. So it's kind of like you have a roped off area of MSS just for these three Symantec products. And I'm told by product management that eventually this will support more third-party technology, which is part of the roadmap. So again, virus detected. That's the old way of doing things. That's the old level of information and intelligence or telemetry, if you will. So this translates into, all right, this file hash from this source applies to all these endpoints. And these 6 people downloaded it today. So let's block that at the network to make sure that there isn't a watering hole embedded in a common website our users are visiting. That sort of thing. That's where the game is really changing. So again, see all attack data in one place, and we're going to go through the demo here, and John's going to take us through and show us all 3 aspects of the solution. contain and remediate complex attacks in minutes, not hours, not days. And again, this notion of click once, remediate everywhere, it's very much a reality now. So I am going to turn control over to Mr. John Higday. He's a security architect on the security team here. John Higday, are you out there, my friend?
Yes, sir, I am. Awesome. So what I want to do for everybody today is kind of give you a walkthrough, like Matt said, a walkthrough of the ATP, Advanced Threat Protection console. This is what it would look like when you're basically coming into the system. You can come in right off the top, and so let's talk about the first part. The first part that I'd like to discuss today is the Investigator. The Investigator, I find, is a very useful tool. It will investigate two different ways for you. It will investigate off a database search. You can search by MD5 file, SHA-256, file name, file folder name, file path, different things that you can search on. Gives you a lot of different search criteria that you can do. And to get that information on the search criteria and how to go about the search criteria is really just a simple click on the question mark, right? And it helps break down your criteria as you want to do the things and search for things. So for example, like Matt was talking earlier, if you want to find a file, for example, let's say food.exe or something like that, and you want to see how many endpoints have that out there, it's a new detection from DeepSight, right? It's a new thing that's out there, and you want to find out if it's in your environment, you can search for it here. So you can search, like I said, two different ways. One of the ways you can search is through the database search, or you can go through, oops, click it over again, or you can do an endpoint search, which will actually go out and look at your endpoints and look and see if a file is actually there. So that's really good. You can also break it down by, if you want to look at certain IP or host name or group or SEPM group name. One of the big things to pay attention about, what I love about this, what I call a really nice tool, or an additional layer tool that will provide you correlated information, all your information in one spot. One of the things that I find out that's best about this is, for the SEP customers out there, for the endpoint side, you don't have to install a new agent. It utilizes the engine that's out there already and provides that next level, that next layer to your endpoint to make it more, provide more information to you on the go. So when we look at the event activity, we've got one set up here. So we can look at the event activity. We can actually kind of see what's going on in our environment. You know, what is actually happening. In this case, we're looking at, we have network running, so it's monitoring the network in a network span. It's monitoring the network. It's monitoring the endpoints with its connection to the SEPM and its connection to the database. And then also it's monitoring email and with the email.cloud connection. So anytime you can look at this, you can look at the event history. As you can see, this is on the first one that I've just brought up here. This is a 7-day. I can bring up and look how many malicious that I had, you know, how many endpoint malicious, how many network malicious, and how many email malicious that was going on. So you can see that information. So that's it's good to pull that information up. Additionally, you can click on it, and then you can go in and say, on what I just had there, you can click on and say, okay, well, what is actually happening within this environment? You know, what detection actually went off? What are we alerting on? What event happened? And we can drill down further. For example, this is a VoIP tool that I know a fact for that is actually good, but I left it up running right now. This tool is basically can be detected as a possible threat or a possible issue. So you can actually bring that back up again, and it shows you that the machine is actually healthy and it's running healthy, that there's no issues, that this was dealt with already previously. And then that's kind of cool to where you want to look at the endpoint and make sure it's healthy, and then you can also search for this file like we talked about over multiple endpoints and resolve those multiple endpoints, right? Not just detect them, you can actually remediate them. You can actually isolate the individual machine or quarantine the file or different things that you can do. For example, right now, I just want more information on this threat, you know, this activity, this attack. What is it? They're all live links that go back out to Symantec Security Response, and they actually pull the information and tell you what this is. In this case, this is a SIP type scanner or a VoIP type scanner, and that's what it's used for. So that provides you that information. And when we go back to the dashboard, let me close that up. Go back to the dashboard. So you get these right in the front, but let's just say, for example, I want to just look at network and I want to see what's going on. How many packets has it inspected, or is it inspecting the right amount of packets? Am I seeing all that traffic? And you can actually go in and look at it on how you want to see what kind of traffic or how much total traffic or what traffic was going on and how many were malicious of those packets that's received. You can also adjust your view wherever you want, from a 7-day, 1 minute, 3 minute, or actually you can break it down and say you want to look at all traffic on there. You can do the same thing with endpoint. What's nice about endpoint is endpoint sees a little bit more, so it shows the total amount of endpoints that we're looking at. For example, what I've got on right now is 19, and it's showing we had 1 malicious. So that gives you the ability to kind of see what's happening in the environment. And as you go down, we don't have any malicious infections as of right now, or any actively infected endpoints as of right now, but we're analyzing over 250 endpoints within this environment. During email or looking at the email scales, the same type of thing. You can look at the email scale and see kind of what's going on with the email and what's happening within the email during that, from the email event activity. So we go down to the next layer down. We're talking about the incident manager. The incident manager covers what incidences are actually happening. What status are they? Are they opened or closed? And what's going on within the environment? So what we can do is we can look at that, and we can go down and we can go in and we can actually click on the incident itself, and it'll give us more information on the incident, what machine it was, what time it happened, and so on and so forth. And if we go down, from there, once we go down on the incident, we'd be able to, if the incident was active, we'd be able to select the individual machine and then also look and see if it's on the other ones we talked about. And then this is where we can go say, this is a file that, or this is a tool that we want to allow. So we want to go ahead and we want to add that to our whitelist. So we would click to add it to our whitelist. So we'd add it to our whitelist, or we can add it to our blacklist. Blacklist if we want to turn around and block that file from even entering our environment. Add it to a whitelist if we know it's a known exception that we want to allow that file. We have rejoin. If we have a machine that we've isolated out there, we can click rejoin and it will rejoin back into the network. If we want to isolate a machine, we can just click isolate on that machine and it will isolate it and put that machine in a segmented quarantined area. I'm going to say segmented quarantine, but it's actually a segmented firewall area, which will protect the rest of your environment from that machine. Or if you want to, you can go out and just delete the file. Just say, I just want to remove this file, not only on this one machine, I want to delete it on all those machines, and you can delete the file from there. Some things require comment. For example, if it's something like this one we know is a good tool, you can go in, you can add a comment saying this is our our VoIP tool that we use, and you can actually add a comment. So the next administrator that comes down the line and sees this event or this attack or proposed attack or malicious traffic, they'll be able to go from that point forward on that. So that's kind of nice to have that. These are the policies that I was just talking about a minute ago. These are about the policies that you can build. In this case, we put in 2 of them that are showing the rule value. This is on the blacklist. You can go onto the blacklist. You can go in and tell that you want to add it to a whitelist. So if you find out that you blacklisted something and then you want to turn around and allow it again, you can just click there to move it to the whitelist, and it will allow that process and then no longer record that incident or that event happening. Or in this case, like we talked about before, when you have an administrator or you have someone or multiple administrators managing a system, in this case you probably would, because you're talking about email, you're talking about network, and you're talking about endpoint, bringing those events and that traffic all together, right? So in this case, you can also put an email, or you can edit your comment, or if you accidentally put one in there or one that you determine that you don't need anymore, you can go ahead and delete that. You can also create your own. You can add to whitelist or add to blacklist, and it's as simple as just clicking on it, selecting what you want to add, right? So what level do you want to add? Do you want to add it on the whitelist? Do you want to add it by the IP address or the domain or a certain URL or the SHA-256, the hash file, right? So it gives you a lot of different options of different ways to add to the whitelist and the blacklist. So that kind of makes things a lot easier to not only just add them, but add them at what level that you add them at, but also gives you the ability to kind of monitor them and manage them also a little bit better. One thing I didn't show you guys right off the top, as I want to show you now, is a lot of people go, what are all those icons? If you click the three bars up on the top, you'll see that it's the search that we talked about at the dashboard, which we were just on a few minutes ago, and then the incident manager and the policies. So now in settings, we can go in and look at the settings. This is basically the foundation, right, of how it's set up and what you want it to do and how your connectors are done, either your connectors to your database, the connectors to your email.cloud, the connecting to your network, and also the connecting to your SEPM itself. So you can also go and look in your global settings, and it'll talk about what's cool about this. It also tells you not only what you want to do, and you can see what you're doing and what you're allowing, but it also tells you if it's enabled. It also tells you if it's healthy. It tells you that, you know, I've got a healthy connection to this SQL or the SEPM SQL database as of right now, and I have no issues with that. If you don't have in your environment, in your SEP environment, and you're a smaller environment and you only have embedded, we actually have a connector for that too that we can connect right directly to your embedded database. So in this case, this one's set up with SQL. Then it also goes down and talks about your SEPM itself, the IP address, and so on and so forth in this case. And then what we're doing is we're connecting up to it. You can configure your backup. You can use certificate-based if you want to use certificate-based to go ahead and do that. And then this is where you upload your license, and then, of course, the mail server to send out. So I can go back from here. And now let's take a look at the appliances. So in the appliances, you can have one. They come in all three, or you can have most of what I'm seeing now is people are putting scanners at all their egresses, all the egress points, and they have scanners that are setting out there, and then they have one CIU, which is a central intelligence unit, which is basically the console that brings all that information from all the scanners into one centralized location. In this case, we've got the management scanner and the proxy all built into one for the demo purposes. In the accounts, it's pretty easy to set up. The accounts are what you can do with an account and how you can do with an account. In this case, all three of these. Dennis Larson is another one of our ATP administrators that manages the network. But you can go in and you can edit the existing account and change whatever you want. You can also go in and add a new account, and there's different roles. So you can select a role. Is this a user, somebody that you want that can only go in there and look at things and be able to not make changes? Or is it actually a controller, or is it an administrator that you're allowing to make all those changes? So that kind of breaks that down. What's cool about it is another additional thing, a little nugget that I can throw out there is if you put a password in there, you can have a generic password that you can allow these people to connect with. And the first thing that the ATP is going to do is prompt them when they log in, is going to prompt them to enter a new password. So that's kind of nice. And then, of course, you can also elect whether you want them to receive or not receive any incidences that occur through notifications. Okay, now so here we're looking at these are events over time. As I said up above, you can go ahead and change it to what you want it to be. You can have a 7-day, 1 minute, 3 minute all type thing, so you can kind of look at what the total events are. So I can say since January the 4th, I can look and see exactly how many events have happened and where we spiked at. Additionally, we can go down and we can look at this and we say, okay, but we're correlating all this information now from 3 different sources, right? So we've got email, we've got endpoint, we've got network, and you tell yourself, well, I just want to look at endpoint. I just want to know what happened on my endpoints. So what you can do is you can go ahead and go into the filters and you can go ahead and say exactly what you want to look for. So in this case, as this example, I'm going to say I only want to look at my endpoint. That's all I really care about. I only want to care about the malicious or the suspicious stuff, and then I can go ahead. You don't have to do anything else. It will automatically filter itself down for you. So you can filter it will filter it down, and you can go in and look at it. For example, in this one, there's a reputation one that Dennis Larson did. You can see where the external location was, where it came from, but you can also go in and take a look at it. I can do that. You can also take a look at it. In this case, it's not actively on the machine because we blocked it, but you can go ahead and look and see what the file is. It's cloudcard.exe, so it brings up the reputation of the file. In this case, the cloudcard.exe, why it says analyzing is because it's a semantic file that they use, and they don't want it to be analyzed good or bad. They want it to kind of just stay in the middle in this case, but it's a good one to take a look at. But let's say I want to add it to my blacklist. I can do that from here. I can add it to my whitelist again. I can submit to Cynic. So I can tell it to submit to Cynic. and it'll just automatically go out and submit to Cynic. I can also look on VirusTotal or submit it to VirusTotal. Excuse me. And VirusTotal will come up and will tell me not only what if the file is detected on based off the SHA-256, it'll also tell me what the other vendors out there are detecting that file as also. So it kind of breaks that down for us, and it's kind of a nice way to break it down. And one of the things that I've always found that's really cool is that you can go in and look and see vote is malicious or vote is if it's harmless, right? And you can actually vote which way you want it to do. Not only on the analysis, you can pull up the actual file detail of what this file is, the MD5, all the actual size of files, all that additional information that you might need for forensic information that you want to pass on later, or some additional things you need to be able to block that further. So it's nice to be able to pull that information up there. Okay. Then you can also copy it to the file store, and then in this case, you can also delete the file. So if this file was present and maybe even present on multiple machines, you could also delete this file. If you're not sure where that file is, maybe on all the machines, you can also do this. You can say, I want to search endpoint, and type in cloudcar.exe, and have it search. In this case is, I didn't put the sup and host group in, that's fine. But in this case, it's not going to find it because we know it's being detected on the far side anyway. So, okay, back to the event. So we can take a look at the events, and there's different ones. Like I said, you can filter down if you only want to look at email events. You can go in and say, okay, I want to see email events. I want to see malicious and suspicious, or maybe I only want to see malicious, and then it's happening malicious. And then it'll break these down. It'll break down what it was that it was blocked. Of course, it's all being blocked like it's supposed to be. But you'll also have the ability to look at the external, right? And it'll say, okay, who's the external person that's actually sending this to me? So you can actually break that down a little bit further. And then you can go ahead and put in blacklist. You can blacklist it or whatever you want to do, or allow that file if it's going to be from a trusted site. The Action Manager, that I did this just a little bit earlier so everybody could kind of see it. The Action Manager is where I was isolating. Anytime that you do something, it records this information in here on the actions that are done. And I didn't have anything that I did anything to go into the Action Manager, but I went ahead and isolated my Windows 10. It says in progress, and the reason why it says it's in progress is because my Windows 10 is dormant right now because I'm on my MacBook doing this presentation. But normally it would show me that it's isolated that box or that client, that endpoint, so that endpoint, if it can no longer be infecting anybody else in the environment. So the biggest thing that you'll see, and the most that you're going to see a lot of stuff, and where most of your activity is going to be driven off of this event activity page. The event activity page brings all that important information, like Matt was talking about earlier, into one centralized location. One place we can take it in, we can correlate it, we can prioritize it, and then it also gives you the ability to go ahead and remediate it. And I think that's what I got, Matt. I mean, overall, that's a good run through on it. If we have some malicious files, I could show some additional stuff, but I think overall, that shows you how you can bring the tool, they'll bring all three of those technologies together to one place.
Yes, thanks so much for that. I think that was a pretty good demonstration. Thanks so much. Terrific. So let's talk about ATP readiness for a couple of minutes. I want to be candid with everyone on the phone here and try to clear the air a little bit on what ATP and what it isn't. Since the December release, I've had the pleasure of talking with a lot of customers, some existing SEP customers, some on competitive endpoint AV solutions that are looking to forklift to a new offering. And we've learned a lot about what people are looking for, or what they're expecting. So I think we have an important job here to kind of clear the air a little bit on what this is, what it isn't, and talk a little bit about that. So first of all, we all need to recognize that this solution has only been out in the wild for a month, right? It's been a very much anticipated release, but it is only out there a month. And any V1 or any version 1, we all know, people that have been in this business and work with different software and different tools of different levels of maturity, we know we're going to see defects and issues, right? I mean, we run into a few here at ITS in our internal evaluations. We have customers that were in the early preview or are in the controlled release. And they've seen similar issues. And the good news is they're small. They're little UI glitches. They're problems with different, dashboard feeds and things like that. Nothing data threatening. Nothing that I'd consider mission critical. But we need to have that expectation that yes, there's going to be issues. There's going to be, problems and bugs, right? So again, the long anticipated release, I think, has a lot of the community anxious to leverage the technology, and that's good. But again, remember, this is version 1. Let's take a sensible approach to rolling this out. Let's be realistic in how we compare this to other technology and other vendors out there. Another point to be made here is that along the lines of this notion of version 1 is Symantec. How I look at this is they've laid out a solid foundation for a next generation threat protection solution. We've got great functionality to extend the efficacy of SEP, correlating with the cloud-based email and the perimeter functionality. In my mind, this does overlap or share functionality with some of the next generation firewall vendors, but it's not the same thing, and we have to make sure that organizations don't make that comparison too much. It's important. It's good to line them up, but we really need to get to the crux of really what are you solving for? How does this solution work today? Where is it going? And make sure that we're very clear with that, right? So again, not the same thing. Although Symantec has had some testing done by some third parties, I think it's Mircom, they show the Symantec ATP solution to vastly outperform detection from competitors like Cisco and FireEye. Again, make sure you're comparing the right things between these different offerings and solutions. Mircom has a great report out there. Go take a look at it. If you want a link to it, shoot me a note or an email or hit me up on LinkedIn. I'm happy to forward that to you. Our friends at Symantec would be happy to get that to you. The other piece of good news is Symantec has a really aggressive roadmap and a solid vision for this solution longer term. I'm not going to get into roadmap. That would be it would be inappropriate for me to do that as a vendor, or sorry, as a partner or integrator with Symantec. So I'm sure would be happy to get a roadmap to you if you want to see a roadmap and see what the long-term vision is. So what you need to be thinking about in the way of being prepared for ATP, especially for an existing SEP customer, is again back to that true risk of your organization. What is your visibility into your vulnerabilities and your overall risk profile? You need to have the answers to those questions. You need to have your incident response team connected to this new way of doing things and have documented processes and potentially updated processes because of how this solution impacts those jobs and those roles, and it impacts them in a good way, in a really great way, actually. Right along those same lines, have open communication between your desktop or infrastructure team, your network folks, your email or collaboration teams. Really important to have those lines of communication open because this impacts those people. It improves their life and improves their day-to-day world. We just need to use this as an opportunity to get everyone talking and make sure that we're all on the same page. So, existing SEP customers, this is where you got to listen up. If you're a vertical that's a focus for advanced malware and you're committing to taking the game to another level, you are the perfect candidates to adopt this, and obviously starting with the ATP endpoint. So I also think this is kind of your last chance to shore up your organization, in that if you're not leveraging the advanced features of Symantec Endpoint Protection, number one, have mercy on you. But I think there are fewer out there today. Symantec And I know ITS has done a lot in the last couple of years to get Symantec Endpoint Protection customers to really leverage the full breadth of SEP. All that additional functionality has been there for several years, and it was there for a good reason. So here's your chance to get SEP current, to make it compatible with ATP. The good news is there's no new agents needed on the endpoints. You just need to bring it to 12.1.5, or ideally, to get everything out of ATP, 12.1.6 MP3. So that's some of the important things that we need to know if you're an existing SEP customer. And here's the cool thing. So ITS, we're ahead of the pack. We go way back with SEP, with the gateway solutions. We were in the alpha and the beta for ATP. We've got everything rolled out in production as a SEP and email.cloud customer. We were a great candidate to get this all rolled in production at ITS. So we have been working with this, since last spring, and we've built this thing and torn it down probably a half a dozen times between different builds, different releases, different versions of this thing. And we've got the 8840 running in production, correlating all three modules, or all three control points. And as you would expect, as a services-driven organization, we have implementation assistance and guidance that we can provide around proving out ATP, rolling it into your environment, right through to managed services for SEP as well as ATP. So I think we have a couple minutes for some questions. I've seen a couple of them kind of come into the queue here. So I'm going to pause here for a second, and we'll start going through a couple of these. We're only going to have time for a couple. The first one I've got, and John, hopefully you're still out there, so that we can refer to maybe aspects of the demo. What happens when we isolate an endpoint? So I think you showed this, but since your Windows machine was offline, maybe you can just talk briefly to what happens when you isolate an endpoint and they have a question mark next to quarantine. So I think they're looking for, if I'm reading this correctly, they're looking for the differences between, what's the difference between quarantine and isolating an endpoint?
Okay, good. Yeah, thanks, Matt. So let's talk about. I mentioned it a little bit in my little demo there that I did, but let's talk about isolate. Isolate, at least the way that ATP is looking at it, or the way that the ATP appliance is looking at isolate, is isolating the endpoint itself. So in other words, we're using the existing SEP firewall, and we're isolating that endpoint off to the side. So what it does is it ends up protecting the other endpoints in your environment. It doesn't allow it to infect them. So that's what isolating is, isolating the endpoint. When we talk about quarantine, we talk about quarantining files, right? So in other words, if we see a file, for example, I gave you like foo.exe earlier in the demo, talking about that one. If I saw that out there and I wasn't absolutely sure that was a good file or a bad file, but it was suspicious enough, I can go ahead and I can do my search for that file, and then I can quarantine that file. I can also choose to later to allow that file back if I want to, or even delete that file against all endpoints that have that certain file. So that's kind of the differences between isolate. Isolate is isolating the endpoint. Quarantine is dealing more with the file level of what we want to do there.
Yeah, right on. That's a perfect explanation. Thank you. So next one is, does ATP provide background or a wrap on a particular threat? And I think I know the answer to this one. Even Mr. Manager here knows that one. That was the VirusTotal example, right?
Yes, sir. Yep.
Great. So yeah, we can get that. We can get that additional detail in that background, and that's where you provided all that great list of what some of the other companies are identifying that threat as, right?
Yeah, there's two different ways to do it. One, I showed you that you can go ahead and you can click on the threat itself, and the threat itself will take you to a definition or a description of the threat from Symantec security response. And the other way to do that is submit that file, actually truly submit that file to VirusTotal, and the VirusTotal will give you in-depth information, not only from what Symantec sees, but also what all the other vendors are seeing, and a lot more additional information on that file.
Great. Excellent. Okay, one more. Let's see. Can ATP network be used in line? Ooh, this is a juicy one. So let me say I believe I know the answer to this, and this it goes back to the earlier comment I made about roadmap. If you want to talk about inline, be aware this is not supported inline. We can't put it inline. It is a perimeter based solution. But I know it's part of the roadmap. I know it's coming. Talk to our friends at Symantec. They can give you the straight scoop on that. John, is there anything you want to add to that?
No, you're right on. This is a span. You can call a span tap or network span. We're just setting and monitoring the traffic, the inbound and outbound traffic, and that's what we're watching. The roadmap, like you said, Matt, was awesome. It is coming. We know that, and Symantec can talk further about the roadmap of when it actually will be available. Perfect.
So yeah, as we've said, we expect a lot of great functionality to be added over the course of this year. Here's the thing about Symantec. I would not bet against them. If any of the naysayers out there, I would not bet against them. You can say that they're late, to this aspect of the game, but let's be real. It's not always the first one to market that ends up owning it. Pay attention to the disruptors that come along later. I always like to compare this to, we're not listening to MP3s anymore. We're listening to iTunes, right? So maybe some of the MP3 players are out there in the way of the previous players, but we're going to be on iTunes. Let's go ahead and wrap up here. This is our how you can get a hold of us or get in touch with us. We're headquartered in Grand Rapids, Michigan. We're a national platinum partner with Symantec. We're based in Grand Rapids, but we have people, salespeople and technical people all over the country. We were Partner of the Year with Symantec 3 times now, 2005, 2007, as well as 2011. And we serve approximately 20% of the Fortune 500, some of the largest healthcare and government agencies out there. So reach out to us via LinkedIn, reach out to me, connect with me and John Higday, and periodically we're producing different thought leadership pieces. We've got an ATP paper out there, we've got a DLP paper, so connect with us to those channels if you want to subscribe to some of that content. Thanks so much for joining and spending an hour with us today. We'll see you again on another ITS webinar. Thanks, everyone.